In this video, we gotta talk about all the future changes to Halo Ranked, including the new Challenger rank that is going to be introduced later on, and a lot of other changes that 343 is deciding on, so we can not only break things down, but even influence 343's future decisions. So there's a lot we gotta talk about, there's a lot we gotta break down, but let's get into it. But the GameLeap website's the best way to dominate, support the channel while climbing to Onyx and beyond. Prepare yourself for that Challenger rank and the ability to dominate on ladder. So do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below. Now, this is an article by 343 that specifically reveals a lot to us about Ranked, what is the big things they're working on, and what will be implemented down the line. And now I'm going to do a combination of summarizing, plus I'm going to just read their questions out towards the end so you get the full picture. Before we get started, here's a little bit of terminology that they broke down so that it's easier to understand the article. So True Skill 2 is the underlying system that is used to understand as accurately and quickly as possible how skilled each player is relative to the population of players. Skill refers to how quote-unquote good a player is, and MMR, or matchmaking rating, is a numerical representation of skill for a specific playlist as measured by the True Skill 2 system. They use this skill rating in matchmaking to ensure fair matches. There's also matchmaking, which is the process in which people are brought together to compete against each other based on various data points, including skill or MMR, or things like data center latency and more. Now, True Match is the underlying system that is used to get the best possible matches by adjusting matchmaking parameters in response to shifting populations. And CSR, which is short for competitive skill rank, is the ranking that you see as a player. While it's closely tied to MMR, CSR is not directly used in the matchmaking process. It is a reflection of your performances in a ranked playlist throughout the season. Now, currently, there are 6 CSR ranks. There's Bronze 1 through 6, there's Silver 1 through 6, there's Gold 1 through 6, Plat, Diamond, and then just Onyx as a numerical number starting at 1500. You'll also notice that under the current system, there is no hard cap for Onyx at all, so you could get to an indefinite number, hypothetically. Now, keep in mind, even after ranked resets or during new seasons, you are still going to have to do those 10 placement matches, and you're still going to be put against people that have similar True Skill 2 to you, so you are getting a better reading, or they are, because they're putting you up against people that are around your skill level, or at least allegedly. Of course, if in your qualifications you just dominate all the people that they think are around your skill level, you'll climb. And also, if you notice that you're playing against higher players over and over again than you used to, that's because you have been playing better and the system thinks you're better. So it's not going to hurt you negatively. In fact, it's probably helping you. Now, of course, if you place in ranked, you're going to get that ranked emblem, and if you made it to Onyx, you're going to get the recon weapon charm, but I wouldn't be surprised if they add additional ranked rewards in the future. Now, getting into some more of the interesting stuff, one of the questions that is often asked is, quote, why does CSR exist as a separate concept from MMR? Why not just show me my MMR? The reason for this separation is due to the nature of True Skill 2 system. Changes to a player's MMR don't always correlate directly with short-term in-game outcomes. For example, you might play really well in a losing effort, in which case your skill rating MMR would go up, but it wouldn't make sense for your rank CSR to go up on a loss. Instead, we would like players to feel a clear progression with CSR gains and losses that make sense in the context of the outcome of the game, while taking the game's difficulty and the player's individual performance into account. Now, they break down some key characteristics of CSR. So CSR will never go down on a win or up on a loss. In the long run, your CSR will always trend upwards towards your MMR. We do this so that your visible ranking is representative of your actual skill. This is particularly noticeable when your CSR is far from your MMR. In those cases, you're more likely to see the maximum per game CSR update, which is plus 15 on a win and minus 15 on a loss. CSR goes up for wins against players who are higher skilled than you, and goes up less when you win against players who are less skilled than you. The inverse is also true for losses. We do this to avoid CSR inflation. CSR will go up on a win when you perform well in game, while still adhering to the plus 15 limit. The inverse is also true on a loss. This means your in-game contributions matter and are reflected in your CSR progression. Now, they go into a lot more intricacy and details on this topic, but if you want to read all of it, you're going to have to go check out down below. It's really, really in-depth. Now, the next thing that they really tackle upon is some things that they factor in order to make an optimal match. First, they take the average team skill gap, make the teams fair so that either team can potentially win each game. The individual player skill gap, determine how close all player skills should be in the match. It helps avoid lower skill player and higher skill player in the same game, which makes a better experience, especially for the lower skilled players. And in my opinion, as an add-on to that, if this is the case, which it is the case, like they don't just have a whole bunch of solos or like a solo Onyx player queue up with like a gold player. Well, if that's the case, you should make it so those players cannot play together. They shouldn't be able to queue together. Now, moving on, the latency to data center, ensure that all players have good connections to a common data center. And then last up is wait time. They don't want to make players wait too long for their matches. So basically, in ranked arena, they want to emphasize small individual player skill gaps across the teams and low latency, which can make the queues a little bit longer, but it's better for competitive integrity. But when they hop into some of the more casual playlists like Big Team Battle, they emphasize faster matchmaking, so they don't really care as much about finding the perfect balance in Big Team Battle, which I generally think a good thing. In fact, I don't really think MMR should be in Big Team Battle personally, but I don't really think it matters either way all that much. Definitely let me know your take down below. Now, getting into the really gritty stuff, they do answer a lot about what they're working on and the future in the community FAQ, which we're jumping in right now. So the first one is the question, it feels like there are too many Diamond and Onyx players, is that true? And they responded to this saying, earlier this year, we confirmed that ranks were on average somewhat higher than expected, and they discussed it already. We went over that on this channel. But our recent update to ranked matchmaking, which was the ranked reset that happened on the 22nd, should have helped to adjust that distribution. It's too early to share full details on the new distribution as many players are still working on their qualifying matches. However, we can share that the players in Platinum/Diamond tiers, the new changes have resulted in CSRs 150 to 300 points, 3 through 6 sub-ranks below what they were pre-reset depending on the playlist. We'll be keeping a close eye on things over the next few weeks as players settle in within their new ranks. Now, the next question is, why does it feel like there are outliers, overperformers, or underperformers in some of my ranked matches? You aren't imagining things. Right now, there can be outliers in ranked matches, and improving this aspect of matchmaking is our highest priority. It's worth noting that outliers can come at all skills. For instance, some players might see a pro who hasn't finished their placement matches dominate while still unranked and consider them an outlier in the matchup. On the other side of the spectrum, you could get a player who isn't as good as you, but because they partied up with a friend who plays at a higher skill, meaning the combined skilled average out to balance out the skill total. Now, they mentioned that this isn't the only reasons that this happens, and I would actually throw in another reason, and it's players that are of a higher skill that don't play enough to get to said skill, or for their MMR and their actual skill rating to match up. So, like, imagine you're someone that every time you hop on, you win. The majority of your games, you win quite a bit, but you don't hop on all that often. You don't grind it out to eventually get to the rank that you deserve, right? And you're going to be like a fish out of water where you're doing really well, above average, until eventually you reach that wall where it's the place in which your skill actually belongs. So, especially in this time frame where there's resets and people that grind Halo not too often, this could happen more and more, and I think it would probably happen the most with a really cracked FPS player that doesn't play Halo all that much, and they're really good at other games, but then they hop into Halo and they play really well, but they don't play enough to get to where they belong, so they're basically smurfing even though they're not trying to. Anyways, long and convoluted answer, but I think that that's another reason that this happens. Now, the next question that comes up is, why can an unrated player match up in my lobby? And the synopsis of this is basically, you can still get matched up against someone that is unrated because that person already has a skill assigned to them, even if it's in flux and even if the number isn't shown, it still has a pretty good idea of where they belong. So just because someone is unranked doesn't necessarily mean that they are a new player at all, or that player is not close to your skill, because they probably are close to your skill. Now, the next question is a rather large one. Does my performance in social impact my MMR in ranked? And they basically flat out admit, yes, this is the case. A lot of threads blew up about this being crazy, but after reading their justification, it makes sense somewhat. So basically, they relate it to a race where if you're trying to figure out someone's skill at a 20-meter race, so you're trying to pick someone to maybe be on your team for a 20-meter race, and you're trying to figure out how they perform, but the person you're considering has never ran a 20-meter race, but they've actually done a whole bunch of 100-meter dashes or miles. And what they're relating to is that someone that has only played casual and hasn't played ranked, they'll take that data over no data. Basically, what they're trying to do is someone who has played only casual for a while that's jumping into ranked, they don't want to put them in the median because that person is a anomaly. So imagine someone that could be of any skill level, someone of potentially high Onyx or someone that is at the bottom of the barrel in the lowest ranks. And if they don't know what that player's skill is, but they throw them in a median lobby anyways, they could potentially throw your games, right? If you're a median player and they think this person is going to be a median player and they throw him on your team, you're probably going to lose if that player is really bad, and you're probably going to win if that player is really good. So they're trying to just ballpark figure it out based on the history of that person's skill in another situation or another mode, aka Big Team Battle, or any of the other modes that are not ranked, to make it so the competitive integrity stays intact. Now, they do know that this is not perfect. There are problems, but once you play ranked, it's mainly taking or primarily taking just your ranked information. It's just more or less going to affect people that haven't played ranked at all or play ranked incredibly infrequently and mainly play social modes and then jump into ranked. That is what they're trying for, but they do acknowledge that it's not flawless. They're working on it, and that's definitely a situation that they're keeping a close eye on. So the next question is, how come there are times when I barely rank up for a win but go down a lot for a loss? So basically it says a couple of things. Either you didn't perform well in your match, or your individual skill was higher than your opponent's, or your CSR is currently overranked and the system is correcting itself. So sometimes it's hard to see the picture in the moment. Sometimes you might have stomped and felt like you deserve a lot, but you really stomped against people that were far worse than you. Or sometimes you get stomped and you lose and you don't lose hardly anything. Or maybe you lose a ton because the system thought that you should beat the enemy. So definitely interesting, but it's important to take all of those factors into account. And also it's important to understand that just because you went up against someone at a certain rank, the system might think that their rank is actually lower or higher than what they currently are, which could affect things as well. Now, the next question is this: will there ever be a reconnect feature added to help in instances where I disconnect or the game crashes? We've also seen this request pop up quite a bit too. We like the idea, but we'll need to do additional investigations before we can make any commitments. This would be freaking amazing. I really think that this is an incredibly important feature to add. Disconnecting and never being able to pop back in. I remember when Halo first dropped, I don't disconnect all that much now, but when Halo first dropped, I was disconnecting like once every 3 games. Every time I would get fucking streets, I'd disconnect, and I'd be so frustrated. That was why it was so hard for me to grind to Onyx in the first place, because in like my first play session of 20 games, I think 7 of them I disconnected or some shit like that. It was fucking insane. Anyways, I definitely think that this is a feature that is needed to be added. It's very important, and I hope they decide that they can do it. Now, the last question is actually pretty interesting, and it's: Onyx is the highest rank right now. Will there ever be a champion rank again? And they respond pretty directly, stating, quote, "We hear this feedback loud and clear and will be adding it in a future season down the road. Similar to the reconnect feature above, we still need to scope out the work of this before we commit to any timing." But they didn't say that it was a maybe or a probably. They said, yes, they'll add it in the future. They just don't know when. And that's really exciting to me, because a champion rank, if you add in a champion rank that's like something like top 500 and you give special rewards for reaching it, all of a sudden I feel super motivated to grind again. Because once you reach Onyx, there's not a crazy amount of incentive to keep grinding, and I would love a champion's rank to strive for and for people to strive for, and just some cool rewards attached to it. But definitely let me know what you think about this ranked update. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? What do you want to do in the future? I want to hear about all your opinions down below. And go to the GameLeap website if you want to quickly climb to Onyx and learn the skills that you need so that when that champion rank comes out, you're ready to dominate. Do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below.